The champagne glass felt heavy in my hand as I stood in the corner of the ballroom, watching everyone celebrate. Then I heard it. My cousin Rachel's voice carried across the room, loud enough for half the guests to hear. "Oh, don't worry about sending Natalie an invitation to the main ceremony. She's too broke to afford the trip anyway. Gas money is probably a struggle for her right now." The laughter that followed felt like a slap. My sister Amanda stood right next to Rachel, and she didn't say a single word to defend me. She just looked down at her drink. I felt my face burn hot with shame. People turned to look at me, some with pity, others with curiosity. I wanted to disappear into the floor. Rachel caught my eye across the room and smiled, this cruel little smirk that told me she knew exactly what she'd done. Later, as I walked past the coat room, I heard her voice again. "Did you see her face?" I finally put her in her place. Someone needed to remind her where she stands in this family. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could start the engine. My hands were shaking. That's when I started thinking about all the other times. The birthday party invitations that arrived late or not at all. The family photos I was cropped out of before they went on social media. The way conversations would pause when I entered a room, then resume in quieter tones. Last month, I'd overheard my aunt telling someone that I borrowed money from family and couldn't manage my life properly. I'd never borrowed a single dollar from anyone. 2 weeks ago, my 10-year-old niece asked me why I was always so poor. When I asked where she'd heard that, she said, "Aunt Rachel tells everyone." I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. There was a group chat I'd been added to months ago, but rarely checked. I scrolled through the messages and felt sick. My name appeared over and over as the punchline to jokes. Should we invite Natalie, or will she ask us to Venmo her gas money? Natalie's probably eating ramen again tonight. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, making a decision. I wasn't going to confront anyone. I wasn't going to beg them to see my worth or defend myself against lies. I was going to disappear from their emotional radar completely. My daughter Olivia, who is 8 years old, asked me the next morning why I looked sad. I told her I was just tired. But I promised myself something that morning while making her breakfast. I would never, ever beg this family for dignity again. I would focus on my work, on raising my daughter, on building a life that didn't require their approval or validation. If they wanted to see me as less than, that was their problem, not mine. 3 days later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in almost 2 years. "Natalie? This is Thomas Richardson. I don't know if you remember me." Thomas had been my supervisor at the logistics company where I'd worked 4 years ago, before the layoffs. He'd always said I had a gift for seeing solutions others missed. "I'm calling because I'm in trouble," he said. "I bought a small freight company last year and it's failing. Contracts are falling apart, clients are leaving, and I'm about to lose everything. I need someone who understands logistics from the ground up. I need someone I can trust." He paused. "I know it's a lot to ask, but would you be willing to help me save this company?" The job would be nights and weekends at first. No guaranteed pay until the company stabilized. It would mean less time with Olivia, more stress, and the very real possibility of failure. But something in his voice told me this was real opportunity, not just another dead end. "I'll do it," I said. "When do I start?" Thomas exhaled with relief. "Thank you. I won't forget this." For the next 4 months, I worked 2 lives. During the day, I kept my regular part-time job at a call center. At night and on weekends, I rebuilt Thomas's company piece by piece. I reviewed every contract we had, identifying problems and fixing them before clients noticed. I reached out to old contacts, rebuilding relationships that had gone cold. I created new systems for tracking shipments and handling complaints. Nobody outside the company knew my name. I didn't get thanked at meetings or mentioned in emails to clients. I was a ghost, working in the shadows while Thomas handled the public side of the business. But I didn't care about credit. I cared about results. By month 3, we'd stopped losing clients. By month 4, we'd landed 2 new contracts. Then came the breakthrough. A national retailer needed emergency logistics support for their holiday season, and they needed it within 2 weeks. I worked 70 hours that week building the proposal. We got the contract. It was the biggest deal the company had ever seen. Thanksgiving arrived, and I drove to my parents' house with Olivia, dreading every minute. Rachel was there, of course, holding court in the living room while everyone listened to her talk about wedding plans. She looked up when I walked in. "Natalie, still unemployed? Or did you finally find something?" The question was designed to humiliate. My sister Amanda nodded along, waiting for my answer. I smiled and said nothing. I just walked past them into the kitchen to help with dinner. Later, as I was loading the dishwasher alone, Thomas called. "I wanted to tell you first," he said quietly. "The board met today. We're profitable again. Real, sustainable profit. And it's because of you."
He paused.
"I want to offer you something more permanent.
Not just a job, Natalie.
A stake in this company. You've earned it." I stood there in my parents' kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, and felt something shift inside me. "I'm ready," I said. The partnership papers arrived 2 weeks later. Thomas explained everything carefully. I would own 15% of the company, with the option to purchase more as revenue grew. It was legal, transparent, and more than I'd ever imagined. I sat at my kitchen table reading the contract 3 times, making sure I understood every word. This wasn't charity. This wasn't luck. This was payment for value I'd created with my own hands and mind. I signed my name and felt my entire future change. My bank account, which had been frighteningly empty for years, began to stabilize. Then it began to grow. Not rich, not yet, but stable. Rent wasn't terrifying anymore. Olivia's school supplies didn't require calculations and sacrifices. I could buy groceries without checking my account balance first. Small things, but they felt like miracles. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Thomas called to confirm he'd received the signed papers. "Welcome to the team, partner," he said, and I heard the smile in his voice. Rachel's wedding invitation arrived in my mailbox 6 weeks before the ceremony. It was handwritten on expensive stationery, my name spelled correctly for once. But it had arrived 2 weeks after the RSVP deadline, which meant it was sent as an afterthought. The note inside was worse. "Dear Natalie, I know things have been difficult for you lately, but it would mean a lot if you could make it to the wedding. No pressure if it's too far or too expensive. I understand. Love, Rachel." I read it 3 times, feeling the condescension dripping from every word. This wasn't an invitation sent with love. This was an obligation fulfilled, a checkbox marked. But as I held that card in my hands, I realized something. I was going to attend this wedding. And I wasn't going to go alone. I picked up my phone and called Thomas. "I need to ask you a favor," I said. Thomas listened as I explained the situation, not all of it, just enough. "My cousin's getting married, and I'd like to bring a guest. Someone who represents where I am in my life now, not where they think I am." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "I'd be honored to attend with you, Natalie. When is it?" I gave him the date and details. Then he asked about my family, making casual conversation about what they did for work. When I mentioned Rachel's fiancé, a man named Christopher Hayes, Thomas went silent.
"Wait."
"Christopher Hayes, who runs Hayes Import Solutions." I confirmed. "Thomas, do you know him?" He exhaled slowly. "Our company has a minority stake in his business, through an investment consortium I'm part of. We funded his expansion last year." My heart started beating faster. "Is that a problem?" Thomas paused. "I've been getting some concerning reports lately. Nothing concrete yet, but enough to make me uneasy. Would you mind keeping your eyes open at this wedding?" Thomas explained that Hayes Import Solutions had been struggling with cash flow issues and delayed shipments. Some clients had filed complaints about missing inventory and billing irregularities. "It might be nothing," Thomas said. "Growing pains are normal. But we have a responsibility to our investors to stay informed, and Christopher hasn't been returning calls lately." I felt a strange twist in my stomach. I didn't like Christopher. He'd always been arrogant and dismissive, but I didn't want to be involved in anything that would hurt Rachel. At least, The part of me that remembered loving my cousin didn't want that. "I'll pay attention," I said carefully. "But I'm not going there to spy or cause problems." Thomas assured me he understood. "Just observe. That's all I'm asking." Over the next few weeks, something strange happened. Rachel started being nice to me. She sent me text messages asking how I was doing. She called to chat about nothing important. She even offered to help me find a job. It felt wrong, like wearing someone else's shoes. The texts kept coming. "Thinking of you today. Hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you need anything." Each one felt more fake than the last. Then I found out why. My aunt mentioned to my mother that she'd heard through a friend of a friend that I might be doing okay financially. Someone had seen me at a nice restaurant with Thomas, discussing business. Someone else had noticed I'd bought Olivia new clothes and school supplies without wincing at the price tags. The rumors had reached Rachel, and suddenly I was worth being kind to. It was so transparent it almost made me laugh.
She didn't care about me.
She cared about what I might have. The old Natalie would have been hurt by this. The new Natalie just took notes and stayed quiet. I didn't confirm or deny anything. I just stayed vague and pleasant, watching her try to fish for information she thought she deserved. Rachel invited me to brunch 3 weeks before the wedding.
"Just the two of us," she said.
Cousin bonding time. We met at an expensive cafe in the nice part of town, the kind of place Rachel loved to be seen at. She ordered a $15 acai bowl and asked me how I was managing everything with a concerned look on her face. "I know things have been tight for you," she said, voice dripping with false sympathy. "If you need help with anything, for the wedding or just in general, please let me know. Family helps family, right?" I smiled and told her I was fine, that things were stable, that I appreciated her concern. She pressed harder, asking about my job, my living situation, whether I needed to borrow anything. I gave her nothing, just vague pleasantries and subject changes. She left that brunch frustrated, I could tell. The next day, I heard through Amanda that Rachel had reported back to the family that I was still struggling but too proud to accept help. At work, I was reviewing quarterly reports when something caught my attention. There was a notation about Hayes Import Solutions that didn't make sense. Inventory numbers didn't match shipping manifests. Billing cycles seemed irregular. I dug deeper, staying late into the night to cross-reference documents. Nothing was illegal on our end. We'd followed every regulation and protocol, but there were concerning patterns in Christopher's business practices that suggested financial instability or poor management. I documented everything carefully and brought it to Thomas the next morning. He looked through my notes with a deepening frown. "This is exactly what I was worried about," he said quietly. "The board is going to want to see this." I felt a knot forming in my stomach. What happens now? Thomas leaned back in his chair. "We follow protocol. Internal audit first, then we make decisions based on what we find. This isn't personal, Natalie. It's business." But it felt personal. It felt like I was holding a bomb that would explode my cousin's future. I spent 3 days wrestling with what to do. I could have buried the report, pretended I'd never seen the irregularities, let someone else discover them months down the line. It would have been easier. It would have avoided drama. But it would have been wrong. I'd built my reputation, my partnership, my entire new life on doing things the right way. I couldn't compromise that now, not even for family who'd never shown me the same consideration. I submitted my findings through proper channels, documenting everything with timestamps and sources. I made sure there was a clear paper trail showing I'd followed company policy to the letter. Thomas scheduled a quiet internal audit for 2 weeks after the wedding. No announcements, no drama, just due diligence. "You did the right thing," he told me. "I know it doesn't feel good, but you did the right thing." I wish that made me feel better. Mostly, I just felt tired and sad and ready for this whole situation to be over. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was at a family barbecue at my uncle's house. I was getting Olivia a drink from the cooler when I overheard Rachel talking to Amanda and my aunt. "I bet Natalie doesn't even show up to the wedding," Rachel said with a laugh. "She's probably trying to figure out if she can afford the gas to drive there. I only invited her because Mom insisted, but honestly, it would be easier if she just skipped it." Amanda giggled. Maybe she'll send a card instead. I stood there behind the fence, invisible again, holding my daughter's juice box and making a decision. I pulled out my phone right there and set my RSVP confirmation. Attending +1 guest. Rachel's phone dinged. I watched her check it, saw the confusion cross her face. She's coming, she said slowly. And bringing someone. Amanda leaned over to look. Who do you think it is? A boyfriend. Rachel shrugged, already dismissing it. Probably no one important. I smiled to myself and walked back to Olivia.
We'd see about that.
I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Not with drama or grand plans, just quiet, purposeful preparation. I bought a suit, nothing flashy, just clean and professional and well-fitted. I got my truck detailed and serviced. I practiced breathing exercises to stay calm under pressure. I wasn't going to this wedding to cause a scene or humiliate anyone. I was going to show up, be present, and represent myself honestly. That was enough. Olivia helped me pick out a tie. You look like a boss, Mama, she said, straightening my collar. I laughed and hugged her. I'm trying, baby. The morning before the wedding, Thomas called to confirm. I'll meet you there, he said. And Natalie, hold your head high tomorrow. You've earned every bit of success you have. Don't let anyone make you forget that. I thanked him and hung up, feeling steadier than I had in weeks. I wasn't the same woman who'd stood humiliated at that engagement party. I'd rebuilt myself from the inside out, and tomorrow they would finally see it. The wedding venue was stunning, a historic mansion with gardens and fountains. I pulled up to the valet station in my clean truck and immediately heard whispers. People I vaguely recognized from family gatherings pointed and murmured. I stepped out, smoothed my suit, and waited. Thomas arrived 3 minutes later in a black sedan with tinted windows. He was wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd built empires. When he walked up and greeted me warmly, shaking my hand and smiling, the whispers got louder. We walked into the venue together, and I saw heads turn. Rachel was standing near the entrance in her wedding dress, greeting early arrivals. She saw me first and started to smile, that familiar condescending smile. Then she saw Thomas. Her smile faltered. Her eyes went wide. She looked between us, confused, trying to place him. I watched her brain working, trying to understand why this distinguished-looking man was here with me, her broke cousin. The recognition hadn't hit her yet, but the confusion had, and that was enough. Christopher appeared at Rachel's side, probably wondering why his bride had frozen. He glanced at me without much interest, then his eyes landed on Thomas, and his entire face went pale. Mr. Richardson? His voice cracked slightly. Thomas smiled pleasantly. Christopher.
Good to see you.
Congratulations on the wedding. The venue staff, who had been politely distant with me, suddenly became extremely attentive. The manager appeared to personally show us to our seats. Other guests whispered louder now, clearly sensing something significant had just happened, but not understanding what. Rachel grabbed Christopher's arm, her perfect wedding smile slipping. Do you know him? She hissed. Christopher nodded, looking sick. He's one of my investors. He owns part of my company. I watched Rachel process this information. Her eyes swung back to me, then to Thomas, then back to me again. I could see her mind racing, trying to connect us that didn't make sense in her version of reality. Natalie. Her voice came out small. I smiled. Beautiful venue, Rachel. Congratulations. Thomas and I found our seats, a decent table, but not close to the family section. That was fine. We weren't here to make demands. As more guests arrived, Thomas was recognized by several people, business owners, investors, local politicians. Each time he introduced me the same way. This is Natalie Chen, my business partner and lead strategist. She's the reason Richardson Freight is thriving right now. Every introduction landed like a small bomb. I could see the shock on faces. I could feel my sister's eyes burning into my back from across the room. The whispers had turned into full conversations. People were pulling out phones, probably Googling Thomas's company and my name. During the cocktail hour, my uncle approached cautiously. Natalie, I had no idea you were doing so well. Why didn't you say anything? I kept my voice gentle. No one asked. That simple truth hung in the air between us. Rachel appeared suddenly, pulling me aside with a grip that was too tight.
We need to talk. Now.
Rachel dragged me into a side hallway, away from the guests. Her wedding makeup couldn't hide the panic in her eyes. What's going on? Why is Thomas Richardson here? How do you know him? I explained calmly. He's my business partner. He invested in me when no one else would, and I helped rebuild his company. We're friends. Rachel's hands were shaking. Christopher is freaking out. He says there's been an audit scheduled for his company.
Did you know about that?
I chose my words carefully. I work in logistics. I review reports. If there are financial concerns in a company we've invested in, we have a legal obligation to investigate. It's not personal, Rachel. It's procedure. Her face went red. You did this on purpose. You're trying to sabotage my wedding, my future, everything. I kept my voice level. I followed company protocol. I documented irregularities and reported them through proper channels. I didn't break any rules, Rachel. I did my job. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. You're ruining everything. Rachel's voice was rising now, drawing attention from passing staff members. You've always been jealous of me. You couldn't stand that I was getting married, that I was happy, so you had to destroy it. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I documented financial irregularities because it's my job. If Christopher's business practices are sound, the audit will show that, and everyone moves on. If they're not, that's not my fault. Rachel's hands were clenched into fists. You should have warned me. You should have come to me first instead of going behind my back. I shook my head slowly. That's not how audits work. That would be unethical and possibly illegal. I'm sorry you're upset, but I followed the rules. She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Rules. You've never cared about rules. You're just finally getting revenge for every time I was better than you. The accusation stung, but I refused to take the bait. I'm not trying to hurt you, Rachel. I never was. I just stopped letting you hurt me. I walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing in that hallway alone. When I returned to the reception, the atmosphere had shifted. My sister Amanda approached me with tears in her eyes. Natalie, I'm so sorry. I should have defended you at the engagement party. I should have defended you every time Rachel made those comments. I was a coward. Other relatives approached, apologizing for believing rumors, for excluding me, for treating me like I was less. My aunt hugged me and whispered, I'm proud of you. It should have felt good, but mostly it just felt sad. Why did I have to prove my worth for them to treat me with basic respect? Why wasn't being their family member enough? Rachel stood near the gift table, isolated now, as guests whispered and glanced her way. Christopher was on his phone outside, probably calling lawyers or accountants. The perfect wedding she'd planned was unraveling, and I felt no satisfaction in watching it happen. I'd never wanted revenge. I'd only wanted dignity. Thomas touched my arm gently. You okay? I nodded. I think so. The ceremony proceeded, awkward and tense. Christopher looked like he might be sick. Rachel's smile was frozen and brittle. During the reception, Christopher pulled Thomas aside, and I watched from a distance as they talked. When Thomas returned, he looked tired. He admitted there were accounting mistakes. Poor management, not fraud, but enough to put his investors on edge. Some are pulling out. I felt a wave of guilt. Did I cause this? Thomas shook his head firmly. You documented problems that already existed. If he'd been managing his business properly, there would have been nothing to find. This isn't your fault, Natalie. But fault and responsibility felt tangled together in my mind. I hadn't wanted to hurt Rachel's future. I just wanted to do my job correctly. The rest of the reception passed in a blur. Dinner was served. Toasts were made. Music played. But the joy had leaked out of the celebration, replaced by whispered conversations and worried looks. As dinner wrapped up, Thomas stood and politely asked for the microphone. The room went quiet. I'm not family, so I'll keep this brief. I wanted to publicly acknowledge someone who rarely gets the recognition she deserves. He looked at me. Natalie Chen joined Richardson Freight when we were failing. She worked nights and weekends without guaranteed pay. She rebuilt our client relationships, restructured our contracts, and saved the company. As of last month, I've made her a full partner with equity ownership. She's one of the smartest, hardest-working people I've ever met, and I'm honored to call her my colleague and friend. The room erupted in applause. People stood. I felt my face burning, but this time with something other than shame. Pride, maybe, or relief. Thomas continued. I'm also announcing a new initiative. Natalie will be leading our expansion into regional markets, effective immediately. Congratulations, partner. More applause. I stood awkwardly, nodding thanks, completely overwhelmed. When I sat back down, my daughter Olivia was crying happy tears. Amanda squeezed my hand. Even my parents looked stunned and proud. I glanced at Rachel. She was staring at her plate. After the speeches, I stepped outside for air. Rachel found me on the terrace alone. She'd been crying, her makeup ruined. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For everything. For the things I said, for how I treated you, for making you feel small when you never deserved it. I looked at her, this person I'd grown up with, who I'd loved before she'd learned cruelty. Why? I asked. Why did you do it? Rachel shook her head. I don't know. Jealousy, maybe. Insecurity. You always seemed so capable, even when things were hard. I think I wanted to tear you down so I'd feel better about myself. It was honest, at least. I took a breath. I accept your apology. But I need you to understand that things are different now. I'm not the person you can mock anymore. I have boundaries, and I'll enforce them. She nodded. I understand. I left the wedding with Thomas, Olivia holding my hand, my head high. I didn't win by humiliating Rachel. I won by becoming undeniable. By doing the work, following the rules, and refusing to shrink myself to make others comfortable. My name is Natalie Chen. I'm 34 years old, from Columbus, Ohio. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel for more stories about finding your strength when the world tries to take it away. This is my story. This is how I learned that the best revenge is simply refusing to stay small.